Hey everyone, I'm Ellesmere, and I'm here to talk to you guys about the 11.0.5 anniversary patch updates to Holy Paladin. I want to start this video off by just clarifying the general state of Holy Paladin. I think that this is going to be a very slight buff for Mythic Plus, with some nice quality of life talents added, and a very slight nerf for Raid. All things considered, the spec should play very similarly to how it already has been playing in the War Within, both in Mythic Plus and Raid. There are a few bigger changes to Crusader Strike and Judgment that will affect the Avenging Crusader build a bit more, but first I want to talk about the class tree. Now, the class tree underwent some massive changes. Our spec tree really didn't get touched at all. There are a couple new icons, but overall, spec tree is exactly the same. Now, many of these changes were actually kind of pointless, but despite the fact that a lot of these new talents are not good, I think it should still be an overall buff for Mythic Plus because they baked in a lot of our old talents into our baseline kit or combined multi-talent things into one. So I'm going to kind of discuss that really quick. The first new talent is Imperial Ward. This talent is pretty decent for tank survivability. Anytime that you lay on hands your tank, they're going to get a nice increased amount of physical DR for the next 8 seconds, which will definitely help. And the ignoring healing reduction effects probably more applicable in PvP than PvE. Fist of Justice, unfortunately, we lost our Holy Power version of this, which was a little bit stronger, but this will give us more consistency in terms of timing of Hammer of Justice. If you want to pick it up, it's not bad, but in general will probably be a niche pick for Mythic Plus that you'd only really take when you drop Improved Cleanse. Adjust Reward is a new talent that got added. This one really doesn't do anything. 125% of our spell power is about half of a non-crit Holy Shock, and we already know how much healing Holy Shock does. So cleansing somebody gives them a very, very, very small heal. I'm talking like 1% of their health pool. Probably has zero impact, but maybe if you're spam cleansing on a specific fight, it could be slightly useful. Light's Countenance, very, very, very niche. You shouldn't really ever need a 15-second cooldown reduction on Repentance and Blinding Light, but if you ever do, there you go. You can now get that. This Turn Evil talent is a little weird because I don't know if people were even using Turn Evil in the first place. I would have to assume that's for PvP, but I don't PvP, so I have no idea at all. In PvE, the only place you would really ever even consider taking Turn Evil, let alone these additional talents, would be Necrotic Wake to handle a Marth, the mage spawns, but that's about it. Holy Reprieve reduces our forbearance by 10 seconds. Really not useful in any way. Not really sure what the purpose of this, especially because of our new talent, Light's Revocation, that makes it so you can cast Bubble through forbearance, which is really the only reason you'd ever want to reduce forbearance in the first place. So not really sure what this talent is about, but I guess could potentially have some slight niche use with multiple paladins. Maybe. Divine Spurs is a little interesting. Basically, it reduces the cooldown of Divine Steed, but it makes it last for less time. So it's 3 seconds instead of 5 seconds. Overall, don't really see this getting taken in most places, but I could see it being decent for Raid if you want more frequent mobility, but not as long duration of mobility. This is a choice node now between Blessing of Freedom and Steed of Liberty. As a Holy Paladin, I don't see any world where we would ever take Steed of Liberty over Blessing of Freedom, especially because we have Echoing Blessings, which grants movement speed when you Blessing of Freedom. So I think for sure, always Blessing of Freedom on this node. Obviously, some of our tier 3 talents got moved up to tier 2. Divine Toll and Quicken Invocation are now up here. Divine Reach is a new talent, and this one is really only ever going to be taken in Raid or maybe like Battleground PvP potentially, but probably not. Don't really see much use for this in most cases, but occasionally it might be nice if your raid is like very spread out and you need to use Aura Mastery and you want to make sure everybody gets hit. Consecrated Ground is the big talent that I'm super excited for. I have been wanting Consecrate Slow on Holy Paladin for years, and I'm super excited that this is coming to the class tree. Not very useful in Raid, so definitely not something you're going to ever take in Raid, but great for Mythic Plus. And that brings us to the tier 3 talents. Now, I made a video about the tier 3 talents before, so I'm just going to briefly discuss everything, but in general, the tier 3 talents are very lackluster, so don't get your hopes up for anything crazy. First up, we have Lightforged Blessing. This actually got nerfed. It now only heals for 2% instead of 3% of max health, but This is an upgrade from the previous Lightforged Blessing, because the old one, you had to have 5 players basically in melee to get full value out of. This one, you only need 3. You're going to get full value out of it much more frequently, and it heals for a little bit more than the old one. So I think this is going to be a decent pickup for Mythic Plus. Lead the Charge is decent in Raid and Mythic Plus. It'll give your allies a little bit more frequency for their move speed abilities, and it gives you a small amount of move speed baseline. Not bad in general, not very good though. These talents are absolutely awful, and there's really no world where I would imagine taking either of them. Worthy Sacrifice, definitely never take. This is a troll talent. You do not want to be auto-casting your Blessing of Sacrifice whenever an ally drops below 35%. That's just really, really, really bad. Righteous Protection, on the other hand, could potentially be useful, maybe, on like a few niche encounters where there's a ton of poison and disease dispels, but probably not. Holy Ritual is better than it looks. It's not good. Let me start by saying it's really not that good. But the one thing that it has going for it is that it works with Blessing of Seasons. Because it works with Blessing of Seasons, that's actually an off the GCD heal. Now, you're not going to want to play around that. Just enjoy the passive healing that you'll get from yourself from casting Seasons on yourself. You're not going to want to be like, oh, I should cast my Seasons on this other person to try to heal them for a fraction of their health. No, it's not worth it. It's not a big enough heal to actually provide any meaningful counterplay, but it definitely will give us some nice passive self-healing throughout a dungeon. Blessed Calling is trash. There's really no way around saying that. It's just bad. It does not work with Blessing of Seasons. It only works with Freedom, Bop, and Sack, and we already have move speed, the 15% movement speed from Echoing Blessings. So really not sure what this talent is about, but don't see it ever being used. Inspired Guard is not a bad concept of a talent, but it's very undertuned for Holy. So 15% healing increase, you're barely even going to notice that. It's very, very, very minimal. Probably won't ever take this in any content except maybe Raid. Stoicism is another weird talent. Not sure what they're doing with this. I have no idea when we would ever run this in PvE. So just never talent it. Seal of the Crusader is actually something I'm going to talk about right now, because before this was a 2 talent node that did about a quarter of the healing that it does now for a 1 talent node. So this went from being a really, really terrible talent to actually a very good talent. Currently, it looks very strong. Ventral Wrath is a nice increase to our single target damage, and it also synergizes really well with Veneration, which heals based on how much damage Hammer of Wrath does. That means when you're in Execute, Hammer of Wrath is going to be hitting extra hard, and you're going to be healing a little more with your Veneration. So this is definitely a nice change for Mythic Plus. Eye for an Eye is a prop Paladin talent. Really have no idea what it's doing on the tree for the rest of us. Basically, this just deals a small amount of damage anytime an enemy attacks you, which, if you're not a tank, is not very often. So this is basically a 0 value talent. Golden Path and Selfless Healer. We're familiar with Golden Path, but now you have the Selfless Healer option. Don't get baited by the Wowhead tooltip. It's not 30/40%. It's actually 10% for both for Holy Paladin. So it's a very small buff to caster Hpal. So if you're running caster Hpal, definitely you want to pick this up, but otherwise there's no point in talenting it. Lightbearer seemed like a good talent until you actually read the tooltip and realized that it's only 10% of all healing done to you from other sources, not just 10% of all healing done to you. Because of that, it has no use in solo content, i.e. Mythic Plus, but it will have a small amount of value in Raid. Overall, not going to be very impactful though. Lastly, we have Light's Revocation. This is what I can only assume to be a prop Paladin talent that will have some nice quality of life uses for Hpal in Mythic Plus. Basically, it allows you to cast Divine Shield even if you have Forbearance active. Now, that's not going to happen very often where you would need that, but the few times where you might need that, it will come in super clutch. So not a bad talent to pick up, but definitely not very good either. That's the class tree. Those are all the changes. Like I said, the spec tree wasn't changed at all. The only other thing I want to talk about really quickly is Herald of the Sun versus Lightsmith. Now, I'm going to include all the builds in the description below for the updated patch. So make sure you check out those builds if you're interested in what the meta builds will be for each content. I personally will be running the Solar Crusade build for both Mythic Plus and Raid. Now, the Lightsmith build runs Avenging Crusader, but I really want to talk about the change that they made to Judgment and Crusader Strike. Now, what they basically did was they took a lot of the power of Crusader Strike, which was getting a little too strong, and shifted it back into Judgment. So now Judgment does more damage than Crusader Strike, which means that the value of Blessed Assurance, which was part of what was getting the AC meta back into the fray, is significantly less impactful because it no longer buffs an already insanely strong Crusader Strike. Now it buffs basically half of that. That being said, the AC build is definitely not dead. The AC Lightsmith build will still be very good in Raid and in Mythic Plus. Will it be meta? Kind of early to tell. We're going to have to see how it plays out in Raid. Overall, not much has really changed with Lightsmith. The only thing that they did change was this tier 2 talent right here. So this is Authoritative Rebuke or Tempered in Battle. Now, Authoritative Rebuke will generally not see any play. The niche pickup, if you happen to want to get more interrupts out, I don't see that ever being taken. The interesting one is Tempered in Battle. Now, Tempered in Battle basically redistributes health. Now, this is a very good talent because it will help keep your group kind of steady. However, it's important to remember that while it's a good talent, it also has the potential to be very troll and ruin your life. That is going to drop you low by redistributing your health, and then you're going to take the AoE, and that could kill you. So there are a lot of ways in which Tempered in Battle can actually troll you and end up getting you killed, and I think that's going to catch a lot of people off guard. So it's important to remember that while this is a good talent, you need to be very careful with AoE hits and understanding how this redistribution can screw you over. That's really all I wanted to talk about. Again, I'm going to include all the builds in the description below, so go check those out. Thank you guys very much for watching, and if you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer.